Always when I've been asked, what's your favourite Radiohead album? I've said, OK Computer, because I don't want to be laughed at by everyone around me. Why would anyone laugh? Because the truth is, I've never listened to a Radiohead album in full.
What?
Until now. I'm going to listen to each Radiohead studio album chronologically by release date. I will listen to the album 3 times, so I'm not acting on first impressions, provide you with my thoughts, and then I will rank them based on how good I think they are. Will OK Computer still actually be what I say? Guess we will see. So let's lock in and get going. I've just got back from my third listen of Pablo Honey, and I have to say, wait, that's Tom York. And the crew really did create a product of the time with this one. Correct me if I'm wrong, as I'm going into these blind, but this album really does feel at odds with itself. It's pretty much a mid-grunge album, and it very rarely strays away from that path. But what I do have to say is when it takes those brief moments to move away from that grunge sound, that is when the album shines the brightest. So let's address the elephant in the room, if you will. Radiohead's biggest single on the album, Creep, which is their most streamed song to this day. Well, if it's the most streamed, it must mean it's their best, right? So, I may not have listened to all their songs, but I know some backstory. When Creep was released, it received a lot of play on every radio and TV channel. And this was to a point where even the band are fed up with it. But look, it did give the band the success they have, and they have since been utilising that success to explore their creative vision. So there is that. Let's move on from Creep and go to the standouts from the album. Not gonna lie, they're few and far between. You is a decent start to the album and sets you up for what is coming after. I like Stop Whispering, with the driven guitar lines servicing the song as they are interjected between softly spoken verses and belted choruses. I think Blowout is a fantastic ending to the album. It's big, atmospheric, and it's possibly the clearest case of the band dipping their toe into the experimental alternative sound that I was kind of expecting. So with that all said and done, I think this album is probably a D tier. It's an okay album, but as mentioned, has a bit of an identity crisis, and it's clear that the band have not found their sound. There are better debut albums out there too, so I can't even build a defence around that. The fact is, I don't find it interesting compositionally. There are highlights for sure, but I'm pretty confident there's better to come. Released in 1995 amidst a ton of pressure from EMI, Radiohead moved directly on with recording, and at the time, the band were confident that everything they had written for this album was far better than anything they had written for Pablo Honey. Spoiler, it was. But before we dive into the music and my ranking, what on earth is this cover? It's giving me Dwight from The Office vibes. It's weird, but I guess weird works sometimes. Straight off the bat, this album feels more put together. It's well composed throughout, and all songs feel like they belong on the same record. You can tell the band are more confident in their vision here as well. They're not trying to be a grunge band, and instead feel like they have growing belief in their own sound, and importantly, their own ability. And it pays off, to an extent. The high points are way higher than their predecessor, and in the same breath, the lows don't go as low. Speaking of said moments, let's dive into the tracks. High and Dry is a fantastically crafted song, with its somber acoustic guitar that builds with a steady drum beat that peaks into a chorus where Tom uses his falsetto voice to engage you in the beauty of the track, and while he does this, he's being underpinned by a slightly distorted guitar. Then moving on from this track, the album hits you with Fake Plastic Trees, which is a great ballad. Tom's belt of It Wears before the song's climax will instill you with crushing but cathartic emotion, and it's definitely one of my favourite Radiohead songs. My other highlights include My Iron Lung, with its jangly but intriguing lead line in the verses that is immediately contrasted with this punky fast-paced chorus, which delivers complete dissonance and chaos. Just is a solid track too. The Bends is a great example of songwriting, as I've said, but ultimately, it's songwriting for pop music. This album almost feels like the band were primed to get another stadium filler to play alongside Creep to move to bigger venues, which is fair enough to be honest, but it lets it down slightly. The Bends brings in more of Radiohead's identity, but to me, it's still missing that final smattering of uniqueness and experimentation. The singles are timeless, and the album feels more confident, but I'm still left wanting just a little bit more of that weird, unpredictable stuff that makes Radiohead, well, Radiohead. So for me, this one's a solid B. Moving on, let's see if I've been lying to everyone for years by telling them that OK Computer was my favourite Radiohead album. After the commercial success of the Bends, the band could have easily played it safe and doubled down on the anthemic guitar rock. But did they? The quick answer here is no, they did not. Instead of making the Bends Part 2, they veered into uncharted territory, crafting an album that fused haunting electronic textures with existential and non-introspective lyricism and sprawling cinematic production. That might be the most spiel I've ever written. You can tell their decision to completely self-produce the album and the lack of pressure from the label. Yeah, I've read up on the albums too. Gave the band the freedom to experiment with tones and take their time with each element. Effects are placed perfectly throughout. Backing guitar lines diverge from jumpy and scratchy to outright melodic when they need to. It feels like no moment, no motif, no drum beat is out of place. And when it is, it feels intentional. I think we can guess that I like this album, but the question is, how much? Let's dive into some specifics then. Airbag is a perfect opening to the album. Then you get Paranoid Android, which feels like 3 songs blended into one. You start with the tranquility of the first section, which slowly transitions to an all-out alternative rock piece in the next, before returning to a more subdued version, then erupting at the end. Exit Music, brackets, for a film, is a beautiful track, curating an all-encompassing, melancholic texture that you could imagine at the end of a movie. Let Down contrasts this with the stunning melody that was shared between an electric piano and electric guitars. While still somber, it's strangely uplifting. Look, I know I said I'd only talk about the highlights, but there's just too many here. So what I'm going to do is move on to what I'm going to call the super highlights, because the rest of the album is great. Karma Police is one of those songs that just completely encapsulates what makes Radiohead so special. It starts off deceptively simple, almost lullaby-like, but then there's this underlying tension that slowly creeps, yeah, that was a bad pun, as Tom's voice grows more desperate and the instrumentation swells around him. It's haunting and strangely comforting at the same time. It's like you're kind of being pulled into this beautiful spiraling chaos. Fitter Happier, on the other hand, feels like I'm getting hypnotised by Megatron. I'm not a fan of that. And then there's No Surprises, which honestly might be my favourite Radiohead song right now. There's something so disarmingly peaceful about it. The glockenspiel twinkling softly lulls you in, then Tom's voice is almost whispering through, again another lullaby-like melody. It's this perfect clash between beauty and despair. To be fair, this track alone is why I used to say it was my favourite of their albums. But is it still there? No one is going to be shocked after that spiel. This album is an S-tier album. It has a clear identity, incredible songwriting, and it embodies the unique style of Radiohead. And that's why it's going straight to the top. The question is, will it keep that number 1 spot? I guess we'll have to find out. Where OK Computer was a fulfilled evolution of their alternative sound, Kid A is a complete change in direction. The album feels like the band looked at everything they've achieved, took in the expectations placed upon them, and decided to burn it all down and start again. Instead of chasing another guitar-driven masterpiece, they dived headfirst into abstract electronics that were in the backing of OK Computer and made them the focus. The album is cold and distant on the surface, with digital instrumentation taking the lead, yet somehow it's deeply emotional underneath, with analog instruments holding it all together. The crazy thing is, Tom's voice moves between both sides, with the use of what is probably a vocoder or a vocal synth, but you can still feel Tom York's isolation creeping into every track. Kid A is disorientating, it's unpredictable, and at times almost unrecognisable as the same band. But that's exactly what makes it so good. Just want to say, without what Johnny Greenwood and Ed O'Brien brought to the table, this album would have fallen apart. Johnny essentially abandoned traditional guitar playing for most of the album, diving into modular synths and strange sampling techniques that gave songs like the national anthem and How to Disappear Completely their uneasy, shimmering textures. Ed, on the other hand, became the glue holding the chaos together. He leaned heavily on looping, ambient effects, and layered textures to fill the empty space where big guitar riffs used to live. My opinion on this album, it's larger than the sum of its parts. Every track creates a soundscape, with most flowing seamlessly into the next, to a point where you can't see the lines. Like, I'm pretty sure I lost track of time listening to this, and I came out the other side knowing I'd had an experience, and that's powerful in itself. I think my favourite on the album has to be Idiotech. What a stunning track this is. Built around this one drum loop, and including a ton of sampling and sequencing, which subtly changes throughout the track. This song makes you descend into the depths of it, and you end up drawn into the subtlety. And as I mentioned, this is all down to the craziness and experimentation of Jonny Greenwood. After this, my next favourite sits in complete contrast. How to Disappear Completely brings in an acoustic guitar being strummed gently by Tom, while both Jonny and Ed utilise their expertise to create a texture that makes the song float above the drum beat that pushes the song forward. These textures are comprised of a string section, multiple guitar effects, and an ondes martenot. Yeah, I had to Google what was making that sound, and I've probably butchered the pronunciation. Then there's everything in its right place. Yeah, look, I could go on for hours about the details of this album. In fact, I've cut half of what I was going to say here, because you don't have time to hear me glaze this album for hours. Do I put it in S tier, or does Kid A go in A tier? I love the album, but is it perfect? Why did I put myself through this? Right, I'm going for an A. The reason I'm ultimately putting it in A tier comes down to connection. I completely admire what Radiohead achieved here. They reinvented themselves and reshaped the direction of alternative music for decades with this. The creativity, the risk, the sheer nerve to release something so alien after OK Computer is legendary. But it's not the kind of album I could throw on any day of the week. It's heavy, it's abstract, and sometimes it pushes you away. I guess that's the point. Anyway. Released in 2001, Amnesiac was recorded at the same time as Kid A. And you can tell. It carries a lot of the same experimental DNA, the same electronic undertones, and that sense of distance. But this time, it feels like they are edging slightly back towards a more traditional band-focused approach. In my research, I found out that the band had originally considered making Kid a double album, but ultimately decided it would be too much. While that's the story we've been told, Amnesiac honestly feels like what was left on the cutting room floor, more akin to what you would expect from an album of B-sides. I'm not saying it's bad, but it does come across as more disjointed, like it's caught somewhere between two creative ideologies. It doesn't have the cohesiveness that Kid A has. Take Packed Like Sardines in a Crushed Tin Box, for example. I like the instrumentation. That metallic, almost claustrophobic groove instantly sets the mood. It's kind of like an African drum, but once I've moved past that sound, that's about it. It's an interesting idea, but it doesn't grow into something more. Pyramid Song, though, is a clear standout. It's lush, it's haunting, and it's beautifully constructed, with those Arabian-esque textures and that slow, deliberate drum pattern that anchors everything in place. But if that's the album's peak, it still sits pretty flat when you compare it to the heights of Kid A. Knives Out is another great song. It's beautifully written. It has those interweaving melodic guitar lines and intricate acoustic patterns that weave together perfectly. It's one of the few moments on Amnesiac that really captures the kind of emotional pull that the best Radiohead songs have. Apart from that, it only has a couple of other moments that hold my interest. My verdict then about Amnesiac is that nothing here really sticks with me. There aren't those clear defined highlights that jump out, like every other Radiohead album. Maybe that's just me, but where I can pinpoint standout tracks on the Bends, OK Computer, and Kid A, this one blends together, and ultimately, I think it's undercooked. So that's why it's going to be put in C tier. It's not awful, there are good ideas here, but these tracks are just B-sides. If you are enjoying this journey with me going through each album, I would massively appreciate if you could hit that subscribe button, by the way. Over the last 2 weeks, I've listened to over 21 hours of Radiohead, put hours of research on top of that, and then edited on top of that, all while working. So if you could just click that subscribe button, you're a legend. Anyway, let's crack on. Released in 2003, Hail to the Thief feels like Radiohead finally taking a breath after the intensity of Kid A and Amnesiac. This one seems to find a middle ground between their electronic experimentation and alternative rock roots. There's still plenty of that weird digital edge in there, but the guitars and drums make a proper return, giving the whole thing a more grounded feel. Honestly, I think this album is better than Amnesiac. It just feels more cohesive. It's like the band finally found a way to blend both sides of their sound without feeling completely detached. In a way, it's almost the reverse of OK Computer. Instead of alternative rock with electronic undertones, this is electronics leading the charge, with alternative elements popping up when they're needed. But that's the tricky thing about Hail to the Thief. With Radiohead's two eras, the alternative rock side and the electronic experimental side, it's a balancing act, and while it's impressive, I don't think fans of either camp would call this their favourite. But there is really good music in there. For example, take 2 + 2 = 5. What a way to open an album. It teases you at the first with that uneasy, restrained intro before exploding into this fiery, full-blown alternative rock track that feels like Radiohead shaking off Kid A and Amnesiac. It's chaotic in the best way, and honestly, it's one of their best songs. Then there's Sit Down Stand Up, which I really like. The minimalist metronomic beat gives this hypnotic drive, and when Tom drops in Welcome to the Jaws of Hell, it's such a standout lyrical moment. The raindrop section at the end absolutely seals it. It's frantic, layered, and brilliantly executed. From there though, things get a bit patchy. It's not all bad, but the next time I land on something that resonated with me, it was Mixomatosis. That fuzzy, distorted bass line absolutely slaps. It's raw, it's gritty, unapologetically weird, and I dig that. For me, Hail to the Thief sits right alongside Amnesiac and C tier, but it's definitely above it. It's a better album overall, more confident, and with a stronger balance between the two sides of Radiohead's identity, but it still doesn't quite reach the emotional or creative heights of their best work. It's the sound of a band trying to merge everything they'd learned from their experimental phase with their classic songwriting instincts, and while that's admirable, it doesn't always hit the mark. A solid album to be sure, but it's not their best. Where Hail to the Thief achieved the balance of Radiohead's electronic and alternative elements, In Rainbows takes it and goes,
let me add a little bit of spice to that.
And absolutely perfects it. If you want distorted guitars, then you have Body Snatchers. Prefer the ballad-like layered vocals of Tom, you have Nude. And then there's everything in between. The rhythmic complexity of 15 Step, the meditative beauty of All I Need, and the pure emotional weight of Videotape, which is killer. It's all here and it all works, which is a testament to the next thing that stands out to me. The instrumentation is phenomenal. You've got these rich, warm synth-like textures sitting beside soft pianos, crisp percussion, and shimmering touches of a glockenspiel and Celeste. Even the strings, especially on tracks like Faust Arp, I've probably butchered that. All I Need, I use sparingly, but effectively, adding depth without ever drowning the mix. Every sound again is intentional, like the band finally found the perfect middle ground between Kid A's digital precision and OK Computer's organic immersion. And when was the last time I said everything feels intentional? Oh yeah. What stands out to me the most is how consistent the pacing is. Unlike Amnesiac or Hail to the Thief, In Rainbows never hits a lull. The rhythms are interesting too, moving the album almost into the sphere of math rock, and that is prevalent from the first track. You were introduced to this work through 15 Step, and straight away you know you're in for something different. There's this offbeat 5/4 rhythm which really sets the tone. It's glitchy, jittery, but it's kind of danceable. And then we step out of this experimentation and we're hit with Body Snatchers, which I love for how raw it feels. It's fuzzy, messy, and it's a full-on rock track. Nude slows things down beautifully. It's honestly one of Tom's most stunning vocal performances, and the whole thing feels heartbreakingly intimate. Now, Weird Fishes / Arpeggii, this one's a standout for me. It's hypnotic, layered and endlessly evolving. The interlocking guitar arpeggios, hence the name, just wash over you, and Phil's drumming is so locked in that it almost feels like a trance. I think the song is absolutely brilliant and probably in the top 5 Radiohead tracks altogether. The rest on here are great, but we need to talk about Jigsaw falling into place, because oh my god, what a song.
Yeah, boy.
That driving rhythm, the way the guitars build layer after layer, the tension slowly rising until it all clicks and bam, you have one of the best alternative rock songs of the 2000s. Finally, Videotape closes the album in the most fitting way possible. It's stripped back, full of emotion, and when you listen to it, you just feel numb, knowing that Radiohead have absolutely delivered a masterpiece. Okay, I've bigged this up massively, so where's it going to go on my tier list? Well, it turns out I've been lying to everyone.
Gasp!
OK Computer is not my favourite Radiohead album. In Rainbows goes straight to the top in S tier. This is an album that I can see myself coming back to again and again. It's just that good. But will it remain number 1? Let's see. I'm almost certain I've listened to this album throughout, but honestly, I couldn't tell you. Why? Because all of it has merged into one giant mush of rubbish in my brain. A bit harsh maybe, probably. Coming off the incredible and diverse album that was In Rainbows, it's weird to see the band corner themselves and almost retreat inwards. The King of Limbs is a sad, sombre affair. Not in a way that I'm saying Radiohead at this point are past it, but the album's pretty downbeat. The whole record feels bogged down with its own restraints, which is weird. Every track trudges along with these slow looping piano lines and skittering rhythms that never evolve. It's like they wanted to make something minimalist and meditative, but missed the mark. It actually starts really promisingly, which is the annoying bit. Bloom opens with an intriguing looping drum pattern and layered instrumentation that hits at something special, and it starts to subtly build. But nothing happens. What you just got there was musically teased. Then you go, oh, Morning Mr. Magpie has this funky rhythm. This has got to go somewhere. Guess where it goes? Yeah, it snaps right back to the same intro rhythm. There's no development. Lotus Flower could be the peak in this trough of an album, and it's the lowest peak of any of the preceding albums. After that, you might as well go to sleep. Every track establishes itself at the outset, and you're sat looking for the subtlety with patterns and effects in the background. Radiohead clearly approached the composition with the mindset of, our listeners will do the work, and in this decision, the ingenuity of Johnny Greenwood and Ed O'Brien is pushed to the background, and it becomes the Tom York show. I didn't enjoy my time with this album. Everything is just a little bit too subtle, but I guess that's kind of what they were going for. To my taste, it's not it, and I'm putting it in E tier. Yet, we've gone from my favourite Radiohead album to my least favourite back-to-back. I've noticed a trend with Radiohead, and this is just my opinion. There seems to be a lesser prequel to a really good sequel, if you know what I'm kind of saying. Think about it. The Benz sets the stage for OK Computer. Hail to the Thief preps us up for In Rainbows. And The King of Limbs feels like the idea that blossoms into a moon-shaped pool. The exceptions are obviously Kid A and Amnesiac, but if you think about they were recorded at the same time, kind of works. What I'm really saying in a long-winded way is that A Moon-Shaped Pool is a good album. It's more subdued than OK Computer or In Rainbows. In fact, it barely hits a point where you'd classify it as a rock album. Instead, it feels closer to a movie soundtrack, which makes perfect sense considering both Johnny Greenwood and Tom York had been composing for film around this time. Orchestration across the record is beautiful. It's both subtle, intricate, and perfectly layered, but also abrasive when it needs to be. Unlike The King of Limbs, songs here actually develop and progress. They don't just hover in one static mood, and while the album remains slow and sad, it achieves a perfect balance of emotions. There's a pulse running through it that kind of keeps it going, even in its quietest moments. Burn the Witch is an immediate standout. I mentioned beautiful orchestration, and here it's stunning. With Colenio, yes, that was music theory. Strings descending into chaos, perfectly matching this plague-like medieval imagery of the lyrics. It's a complete work. It's tense, unsettling, and incredibly cinematic. Daydreaming isn't really my cup of tea. Although I appreciate, again, the lullaby-like patterns. And when I told my friend I was going to listen to this album in the car, he said, you probably shouldn't, because there's a song called Daydreaming, and that'll send you to sleep. The way the snoring samples are embedded into low double bass bows towards the end of the track is actually really clever too. Identikit is the closest this album gets to a rock track, but it's more of a rock backing, layered with choral textures floating on top. The numbers feels folky, warm, and understated, so I guess we'll just go to the verdict. I think this is a B tier, just below the Benz. Why, you ask? So while it doesn't have a full list of instantly memorable singles, it's a beautifully composed, cohesive album from start to finish. It perfects the mood it wants to create. It has brilliant orchestration and emotional flow, and that places it above the highlights of Hail to the Thief, even if it doesn't quite reach the iconic peaks of Radiohead's best work. So, after all that, and that was a lot, what does my Radiohead tier list actually look like? In S tier, we have In Rainbows and OK Computer. I mean, both have absolutely fantastic albums. OK Computer is a masterclass in songwriting, tension, and sonic ambition, and In Rainbows perfects everything the band have been working towards. A tier, we have Kid A. Kid A nearly made it into S tier. I can't stress that enough. They burned everything down and rebuilt it, and that is a testament to them. Honestly, I'm still kind of stressing about putting it in A tier. B tier, we have The Benz and A Moon-Shaped Pool. The Benz finds the band confident, polished, and full of soaring alt rock classics. And A Moon-Shaped Pool is the opposite, but in a good way. It's slow, cinematic, and it balances emotion, and it's a perfect orchestration of an album. In C tier, we have Hail to the Thief and Amnesiac. Hail to the Thief has brilliant singles. 2 + 2 = 5, They're There, Go to Sleep, but after that, there's not really much that keeps you there. Amnesiac feels like leftover Kid A material. It's Kid A's B-sides, let's not kid ourselves here. D tier, we have Pablo Honey. It's a rough debut. I mean, it's not a bad album, but it's still the band finding their voice. There's sparks of Radiohead in there, like Blowout and Stop Whispering, and they hint perfectly at what's to come. Then in E tier, right at the bottom, we have The King of Limbs. I wanted to like it. I wanted to like all of these albums, but it just drags. So there you have it. Let me know what your ranking is. If you like this format and want to see me go for another band's discography, comment and let me know. Right, I'm not listening to Radiohead for another 3 months after that. I'm going to crack something cheery on.